Hello PSI Gamer fans, and welcome back to another Rimworld Ice Sheet video. We are continuing from where we left off, with Shepard sitting at the research bench, and Jimmy mining steel to the south. The first thing that Shepard and Jimmy are greeted with today is a cry for help from a tamer named Robert. He wants to come live with us, but if we accept him into our community, all males will have half consciousness for 7 days. In my opinion, that is too much of a risk, and another colonist is not really what we need right now, since our food supply is already being stretched thin. So Shepard ignores the message. Later that day, a transport pod crashes to the east of the base. Since the person inside is our enemy, I'm not really interested in trying to recruit her, and I will instead let her die of hypothermia in exchange for some free food. Later that night, Shepard, who is once again suffering from food poisoning, has his first mental breakdown of the series. He goes into a daze and begins wandering around the area. This will make him completely useless for at least the next day, so it'll be up to Jimmy to keep everything running smoothly. Unfortunately for Jimmy, the food supply has dwindled down to just human meat, and Jimmy is not a cannibal, so he will not be very happy about this. Afterwards, we can see Jimmy trying out the research bench for the first time. However, he is not the smartest guy out there, and he doesn't make much progress. Since Jimmy's mood is starting to drop, I'm going to have him construct some steel spike traps by the entrance of the base. That way, if we get attacked while people are having mental breakdowns, the traps may be able to rout the enemies for us. The next day, Shepard snaps out of his daze and goes to bed, and Jimmy makes some further progress at the research bench. Later, Shepard wakes up and takes over for Jimmy at researching, and Jimmy goes mining. It is at this time that Jimmy has a catatonic breakdown and drops to the ground. Shepard quickly tugs Jimmy into bed to let him rest. Food is starting to become a very big issue out here, but luckily an Arctic wolf wanders into the area, so Shepard grabs his gun and heads north, hopefully to obtain some more precious food. The wolf tries to fight back, but Shepard is too good a shot to let the wolf get close to him. And he walks home with a wolf in his hands. Although the wolf will provide some food, it will not sustain them for very long, so Shepard will have to stay on the lookout for some more food in the future. Shepard then goes back home and sits down at the research bench. He remains there for the next couple of days until he figures out how to craft hydroponics basins. At this point, Shepard will be using the steel that Jimmy mined to build a large greenhouse for the hydroponics basins. He will also construct a sun lamp so that plants get enough light to grow inside. To finish this project, Shepard will need some more components to build the hydroponics basins, so he heads north to mine for machinery. After building some heaters and 2 hydroponics basins, Shepard can sow his first plants. A small patch of rice, but before the rice can grow, it needs more power. Sun lamps consume a very large amount of power, so Shepard builds himself a second wind turbine with some other resources that he has gathered. It is at this point that Jimmy gets up from his catatonic breakdown. However, things do not look good for Jimmy. He is suffering from moderate malnutrition, and Shepard just ate the last bit of meat that was in storage. Even though he is weak, I'm still forcing Jimmy to go mine for resources. The following morning, Jimmy suffers a mental breakdown due to advanced starvation. At this point, there's not much to be done. There's no food in sight, so Jimmy is stuck wandering around until he inevitably drops unconscious. That evening, there is some good news, however. Shepard is able to harvest some rice from his hydroponics basins. He runs over to the room where Jimmy is starving on the floor to feed him some raw rice, but he is too late. Jimmy has died and Shepard has lost his only friend. Luckily for Shepard, he can now eat Jimmy and he will not starve to death. Shepard then goes back to work, although his mood is much lower now that his friend has died. He builds a third basin and sows more rice plants. And then the first major threat in a long time appears. A pair of man-hunting snow hares have arrived and are approaching Shepard's base. Shepard is positioned by the pond and he aims his rifle. After a few shots, he's able to take them down, and he's earned himself a little bit more food. On his way home, Shepard then suffers a mental breakdown again. After about a day of wandering, Shepard stops and goes to bed. On the same night, the rice is ready to be harvested again, so Shepard gets up before he's fully rested in order to stay on top of food production. Shepard's plant skill is not great, but he still manages to harvest 42 units of rice, enough to cook 4 meals if Shepard has a stove. Because cooked meals are more efficient than eating raw ingredients, I will not be allowing Shepard to eat any of his rice until he cooks it into a meal. He builds himself an electric stove, and even though he has a level 0 cooking skill, he manages to cook 4 meals for himself out of rice. For the first time in the series, Shepard gets to eat a warm meal instead of raw meat. He then goes back to bed. After sleeping through the morning, Shepard goes back to the steel vein to mine more, and then he goes north to mine for components. On the way there, a low psychic drone begins. Considering his already low mood, this could be a potential problem. After mining a few components from the mountain, we receive another call for help. A refugee named Lek wants to stay at Shepard's house for 11 days. I will not be accepting the quest in this episode, but depending on our circumstances, I may accept it in the next one. Shepard carries a total of 18 components back to the base, and then eats a meal and finally gets to sleep by the morning. Later that day, a transport pod crashes outside of Shepard's base. The person inside is not particularly useful, so Shepard will be leaving her outside to freeze to death. In the afternoon, Shepard wakes up and builds a third wind turbine using some of his components in order to solve some power issues. Shepard consumes his last meal right before bedtime, so he will have to cook some more with the rice he has just harvested. You can see that this is a lengthy process due to his very low cooking skill. He cooks 5 more meals of rice for himself before he can sleep, but he also heads outside to recover our dead transport pod victim. Before this can happen, however, there is trouble coming his way. A lone tribesman is coming his way wielding a club. This could theoretically be bad, depending on how good Shepard's aim is tonight. The attacker gets somewhat close, but falls to Shepard's superior weaponry before he can deal any damage. He's also brought some precious medicine with him, which adds to the number of items that Shepard has to haul inside. Shepard hauls the body of his attacker inside, and he goes to sleep for the night. When Shepard gets up, he goes for a walk outside, and then he moves his research bench into the greenhouse because it has a better temperature. He then mines the remainder of the steel vein to the south and carries the steel back to his base and sits down to work on his next research project, which is the geothermal generator. Before he can make any progress in his research, however, all of his rice plants get hit with a blight, and then he has to get up and cut them and sow new plants. Shepard then goes off to bed for the night. At this point, I think this is a good place to leave things off for this episode. I'd like to remind everyone to like this video if they enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if they haven't already. Supposedly, 71% of my viewers are not subscribed, so if you're one of those 71%, please consider hitting that subscribe button to see all of my future videos in your feed. With that out of the way, I thank you all for watching my videos, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!